Hello everyone and welcome back to our Budget Builds monthly series. Let's check out what we have for the month of February. Before we get into it, I want to give a quick insight as to what we do for this series. We take your budget and answers from a request form. In the video description, there's a link to a Google form. It slowly gets updated every so often. With this information, we try to build the best computer we can to fit your means. Unless there are budget constraints, we spec out systems on AMD and Intel, both using their DDR4 and DDR5 Gen platforms. Once the build lists are complete, we compare each build using online benchmarks and list out the pros and cons between the top builds from the benchmarks. Using those, then we can determine what build is the best for your use case. But we can't do any of that without your input. Speaking of the Google form, let's see how you fill it out. And here's our Google form. Just a reminder, we do not collect any personal information, such as email addresses. Budgets are in USD. They do not include taxes, fees, or Windows keys unless you ask. Your type of system, if you want a gaming, working, or a combination of the two. Your form factor preferences. This will determine what case size we can use or you want. If you want a mini ITX system, all the way up to XL ATX. Any CPU or GPU preferences, whether you want an Intel or AMD CPU or GPU, or anything other, just put down here. Areas of focus, if you want to focus on the CPU, the cooling, the motherboard, anything specifically, we will be changing this soon to be more of a priority. So if you want to focus on more your CPU and then your motherboard, or maybe you want to focus on more GPU first and then your CPU. Now, if you've already purchased or owned some system components, it's best to list them down below. There's no sense into buying two of something you already have. For example, if you have an 850 watt gold power supply you will be wanting to use for your next build, I would just put PSU:850 watt gold. Doesn't matter if you have a Corsair, or EVGA, or anything like that. Any peripherals you want for the system, like a mouse, a keyboard, a monitor, or headset, anything specific, just put down in other. And then any other request, RGB, no RGB, or if you want us to include taxes, fees, Windows keys, etc., just put down in the other request. And then when you fill that all out, just hit submit. Quick disclaimer, prices will vary if any sales are going on or stock changes at the time of recording. Because of this, we tried to get the budget builds as close or slightly over the stated budget. Unless asked, we are not including taxes, shipping costs, OS keys, or peripherals in the final cost from the budget. Alright, with that all out of the way, let's see what our response is for this month. Unfortunately, just like last month, we have not got a single response on our Google form. Please respond to these Google forms. It is the only way I can make this series for you. Because we have no reply, we're going to do something else instead. Valve released the Steam Deck not too long ago, so we're going to check out that. There's different resellers we can get the Steam Deck from, such as Amazon, Walmart. I wouldn't really go eBay or StockX, but we can also go through Steam themselves. If we go directly from Valve, we can get the 256GB LCD for $399, the 512 OLED for $549, and the 1TB OLED for $649. Now if we scroll down a little bit, we can still get the original 64GB and 512GB LCD versions for $349 and $449. Now we have all these options, but we still need to figure out our budget. Choosing a budget for this is going to be a tad difficult since this falls under its own category of handheld gaming computer. And because of it, I turned to Reddit, scrolled through their gaming laptop subreddit, and decided based on users' posts, people spend right around $800 to $1,200 USD on gaming laptops. Some spend more, others spend less. So with this, going back to the Steam page, we're going to choose a budget of $600 to $900 USD. And the reasoning behind this is because it's less of a laptop and more of a handheld. We will not be comparing this to any other handheld gaming PCs such as the Ion Neo, the One X Player, or the Asus ROG Ally. And for those wondering, no, the Switch does not fall under this category. This episode of Budget Builds Monthly is more focusing on a single handheld, the Steam Deck, and seeing what we were able to do with it and its budget. Because of portability, I'm going to make 3 build versions. First one's going to be a fully portable. This is for users mostly on the go. They want something that they can take everywhere. The second one's going to be a hybrid. You're mostly portable, but you also find yourself sitting at a desk. And the third one's going to be stationary. You find yourself mostly sitting at a desk, running things, but it's nice to have it to take it on the go. Based on this criteria, there's a possibility that we can compare these to a gaming laptop or desktop, but that will be done later. Starting out with our fully portable build, we're going to get something that has everything we need. Now I would choose either the 512 or the 1TB OLED models, as these are the only OLED models available, as these have a step up in specs compared to the regular LCD versions. Now the preference between the 512 and the 1TB is pretty much the anti-glare etched glass. Now they do sell screen protectors that have anti-glare coatings on them, but since I have not tested these myself, I cannot speak for them. We're going to choose the 1TB OLED for this build and see how we can spend our remaining $250 USD upgrading it. Now, we do not need cases for any of these as they come with a carry case, so we're going to skip on that. But we will need a nice battery pack with a charger, maybe some headphones, and a big SD card for more games. After all, we are fully portable. So after shifting things around, I finalized this as our fully portable build. Since we're fully portable, we went with the 1TB OLED model for $649.99. Went with the Sennheiser HD 450BT. This is just a Bluetooth and wired headset that I found. You can go for something else if you have something else that's a lot better than these. I'd go for that, but this does offer Bluetooth and wired capabilities. For a power bank, we went with a 24,000 milliamp hour Anker 737. You don't have to go for this specific one. It was just something I found. If you go for a little bit of cheaper one, then you can actually get a 1TB micro SD card, but this time we went with the SanDisk 512. This keeps us right at that $900 USD budget. Now you can actually drop down the Steam Deck to the 512 and get more peripherals or different accessories, but since you're going to be doing a trade-off for storage, you might as well just keep it like this, because you can always just buy a bigger micro SD card. Now you could technically get the 512GB Steam Deck model and no SD card and buy a 2TB NVMe SSD to replace it, and you would actually get more storage overall. But the choice is up to you. Pretty good for a smaller budget, and you can always spend more or less on certain components. For example, you can go with the 512GB model and a screen protector that saves you 100 USD to put towards anything else. Speaking of the 512GB model, we're going to be using that for a hybrid build. Hybrid builds normally consist of a workstation setup and some on-the-go travel. So we will be getting the Steam Deck dock, an SD card, that screen protector, and it'll leave us with around 200 USD for a monitor, keyboard, mouse, and headset. Now technically you don't need to buy those peripherals unless you're looking into your first setup. If that's the case, the choice is up to you on how you want to run it. For a hybrid build, we went with the 512GB OLED model. We went with the Steam Deck dock only because you might find yourself plugging in. You don't have to get the Steam Deck dock specifically. And then we went with the keyboard, mouse, that same headset, and this time we went with the 1TB micro SD card. Now this hybrid build does not come with a monitor, and you don't have to specifically get the Steam Deck dock, because you're going to find yourself sitting at a desk sometimes working. The 7.5-inch screen might not be big enough, so you might find yourself needing to be plugging into a monitor. If that's the case, I would actually shift these things around and buy a monitor instead, but the choice is up to you. Again, you don't have to get the Steam Deck specific dock. You can go for something cheaper and move some money around. Let's take a look at our stationary build first before you can determine what you want to do. Our stationary build. This is where things get interesting. This is mostly for users who do most of their gaming or work using a mouse and keyboard. And this way I would recommend a laptop or PC for this budget. But if you don't want to lug around a laptop or mini ITX system and its peripherals everywhere, this will follow suit more in the hybrid category. So for the Steam Deck, I would choose the 256GB LCD model. Get the dock and then get one good of everything for your desk rather than buying multiples as your budget increases. Speaking so, I would actually look into spending a little bit more than 900 USD as you'll be daily driving this, with the occasional grab and go. And then finally we have our stationary build. Went with the 256GB LCD model to save as most money we can on this. You could go used and it would drop you down another 150 USD, but we're not going to talk about that. Then you can go the Steam Deck dock again. You don't have to go for that specific one. Went with an Asus TUF Gaming. This is a 165 Hz 1080p 24-inch monitor. That same keyboard, mouse, and headphones, and this time we added a 1TB external SSD from Crucial, since this is mostly you sitting down at a desk and working and being able to take it on the go. Now you can technically take that 70 USD from the Crucial and put it towards a 1TB internal SSD, and then you're good for on the go travel when it comes to that. But again, the choice is up to you on how you want to move around some money, see how you can change this build up. Now, if you already have all your peripherals, such as your monitor, keyboard, your mouse, maybe you still have headphones, then all the money you save from not spending on those, you can actually put towards the Steam Deck and maybe getting some more storage for your home setup. All right, and that's about it. Let's compare our Steam Decks to this laptop. Even though it runs a little bit over $900 USD of our max budget, you have the entire setup for the price of some gaming desktops, which leaves us only needing to compare this stationary build to a gaming laptop or build of our own. Now, based on the final price for the Steam Deck build, we're going to be finding a laptop within that budget, and for the sake of time in this video, only one laptop, no comparisons, and one built PC based on the Steam Deck specs, and then upgrading from there. So just give me 1 second. Now, I know I said we're going to be comparing one laptop, but you can get the Asus TUF Gaming A16. It's a full HD with a Ryzen 7 7730HS, 16GB of DDR5 memory, and an RX 7600 with a 512GB SSD for around $800 USD right now on Best Buy. And if you hop over to Amazon, you can get the Strix G15 with an RTX 3060, a Ryzen 7 6800H, 16GB of DDR5, and a 1TB SSD, all for $1024 on Amazon. Now, if you go for the 3050 model and 512GB SSD, it drops you down to $929, sitting at that budget. And then we're just going to compare one more freshly built PC. Something I want to say really quickly before we start looking into this. Currently, this build is at $808 USD. We have the entire PC built for the most part, but we don't have any peripherals. And the $900 USD max budget is not going to give us enough room to get a mouse, a keyboard, a headset, and a monitor that we saw in our Steam Deck builds. So what we're going to do is try to build this at just under 1,000 USD. It's going to be going over our budget, but this again is going to be an entire workstation for almost the price of a Steam Deck. And we're just going to show some trade-offs really quick of the portability using the Steam Deck versus carrying around an entire PC. The only reason we built this was to show that for the same price, if you're going to be sitting stationary, you might as well get something really, really good. If your main focus is going on the go, I would get something like the Steam Deck with other portable or hybrid version. So let's finish this build real quick and then see how we finalized it. All right, and this is how we finalized our build. We pretty much just added the peripherals at the same headset, mouse, keyboard, and monitor that we did before, sitting right around 1160 USD. Now overall, this is about $260 over our $900 USD budget. But of course, we're building an entire desktop and setup at the same time. So it goes to show that you can pretty much get a nice Steam Deck and an entire setup for a reasonable price. And you get that portability of the Steam Deck. Now, things are running a tad long, but I do want to include a brief testing of the Steam Decks to show you what the trade-offs are between each model. Now, the LCD models and the OLED models had the same screen resolution, but OLED will be a lot better. The LCD and the OLED have a 10 watt-hour difference in battery, and the OLED model comes with a 7.4-inch diagonal display rather than the 7-inch from the LCD, as well as a 90 Hz refresh rate. So based on testing, if you're doing more on the go travel and be staring at the screen, I would go for an OLED switch. If you're doing more PC oriented desktop workstation, I would go for an LCD, as you can save some money and put it towards some better peripherals because you're occasionally grabbing it to go, but the choice is up to you. And there was one more thing I wanted to bring up. You could go refurbished for the LCD models as the price goes down, but you will be waiting for inventory. Currently, all models of the LCD are out of stock. And that's all we have for this video. Please fill out that Google form. If you wanted me to do a different type of video series in place of this, comment down below to consider subscribing. Like if you like, dislike if you dislike it, and I'll see you all in the next one.